Aimee, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to be talking to you. Well, tonight. I was about to say today, but it's actually nighttime for me. And I'm just so intrigued by what you've been building. And, I've been following you on LinkedIn for a little while because Andre, who is a colleague of sorts of mine, introduced me to your brand. So I started following you, and I'm just like excited on so many levels.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so I will say that kind of just organic traction and people talking about it and introducing the brand to, people who they know and admire, that's, been the driving catalyst for, the early success that Better has had. And I think that's really special and meaningful because it means that the brand stands for more than just the products that we're putting out, and that there's this greater mission that people are so excited to be talking about and sharing. That's really, really great to hear, about how you even heard about us in the beginning or in the first.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, shout out to Andre. He has an email marketing agency called Flowium, and he's just all sorts of great. So I'm going to make sure he listens to this episode. Before we get started, can you give us a bit of an introduction to who you are and what your business is for anyone who might not know just yet?
Yes. So hi everyone, my name is Aimee Yang. I'm the founder and CEO of Better Brand. Better Brand is a consumer food tech company, and we're working in and leading innovation in the refined carb space. Just think about creating a world where we can eat the foods that we crave freely without fear of weight gain or negative health consequences, and without compromise. And that's kind of the gist of who we are and what we're doing and driving forward as a business. To put this into some more practical perspective, our first product, the Better Bagel, which is, obviously a really carb heavy food, or the bagel is, we're transforming it into the carb equivalent of 2 slices of banana. So just, in terms of innovation and changing the consumer experience with food, and is really what we're setting out to do.
I'm like so excited about the future when we think about, businesses like yours, when we think about lab grown milk and lab grown meat and, beyond and impossible and non-alc and all this kind of stuff that's coming. I'm just so excited for what the future looks like in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, when things are just like, we won't need to eat dairy. I mean, I don't eat meat now, but we won't need to eat. Those things will have great alternatives. I'm so excited.
And that's actually what kind of sparked, this idea for Better Brand. And to begin with is, there was so much innovation, like you were saying, happening in the food tech sphere, right? Whether it's, meat alternatives or dairy alternatives. But if you think about the refined carb sphere, right, it's a $10 trillion space. And it's 10 times larger than let's say meat, which is, about 1.2 to 1.4 trillion, depending on, how you count the market or addressable to market sizes. And it's a completely open space that has so much driving impact to human health, and is literally the most like leading cause and driver of obesity in the world. And yet no one has come in and said, we're going to be the Beyond Meat of carbs, right? And that's exactly what we're doing, and excited to do, and put our stake in the ground and drive large scale impact in that way.
What's kind of like mind blowing to me is I just never even thought of that. Like, I just never even thought who could make carbs in a different way. So what I'd love to know from you is like, can you take us back to the time where you were starting to have light bulb moments around tackling this, and how one decides on bagels?
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably in terms of those light bulb moments, it started fairly early on in the journey. I've always known that I've wanted to be an entrepreneur. But, set my career, or spent the early part of my career setting the foundation. So I'd be ready to do so when it got to that point. So I was a CPA in a former life to learn the ins and outs of how a company operated, then worked in Bangalore, India, building Ernst Young's Global Talent Hub team to learn about operations and teaming and cross-cultural integration, then worked in consulting and litigation to learn about large data synthesis. And then once I felt that I had the foundational aspects ready, went to Wharton, got an MBA, and in entrepreneurship and strategic management. And it was really there that I think, despite knowing that I've always wanted to build something, it really hit me in terms of the scope of what that could be. And I think it's because you're always in this bubble, right, for 2 years, and you're constantly surrounded by greatness. So, I remember this period of time where it's like Joe Biden was in the room, right? And then it was like Neil Blumenthal, and then it was like Roger Iger and Melinda Gates. And it's almost like it instills in you this belief that, or understanding, maybe is a better word, that not only can you drive impact as one person, but it's almost your responsibility to do so. So then at that point, I started to think about what my personal pain points were. And you need to be passionate about something, right? That you're building. And for me, my largest pain points were always around diet and healthy eating. Like I was always on this cycle of wanting to eat something or craving it. And, if I ate it, I'd feel guilty. If I didn't, I'd feel deprived. And it was just this like roller coaster, right? It consumed so much of my mind space and garnered so much negative anxiety that I wanted to create a better way. And I mean, this is actually kind of an embarrassing story, and I don't think I've ever told it before.
Oh my God, yay, please tell it.
I remember this moment when I was in high school and it was my birthday. And, there was a birthday cake and on your birthdays, you make a birthday wish. And I literally wished for the ability to just eat what I wanted without having to worry about consequences or, weight gain. And I think maybe that why it became so apparent at that time is because, it's a birthday, you want to eat cake, right? But then you feel bad about eating cake. And like, we shouldn't have to do that, right?
My husband literally says that at least once a day. He'll kill me for saying that. But he's like, "I just wanna eat all the things." And yeah, anyway, I know those feels.
Why do we have to live a life with these limitations? When we've come so far in the spectrum of just pushing boundaries in so many other areas. So then at that point, I was like, kind of going back to that earlier story, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create this world where we don't have to worry about eating something and negative consequences associated with that. So at that point, started doing a ton of market research, understood the market was, an over $10 trillion market.
Did you start, sorry, on bagels or just in general carb food?
Completely in general was our scope. And then, we did a ton of consumer research and testing. And why I wanted to start with the bagel is, well, one, who doesn't love a bagel, right? And two, kind of similar to that experience of eating cake on your birthday, I feel like a bagel is a food that just brings you so much joy. It's associated with these like special brunches or occasions with your family. But whenever we spoke to a consumer, it's like, oh, this off limit food, or it's like, it takes away from that experience. And, you just feel like, okay, if I eat it, then I'm going to have to make up for it in some other way. You feel bad about eating it. So, I think eliminating that is really that a powerful, like emotional driver and bringing and showcasing what we can do by bringing joy and back into those experiences, right? And then, third reason is because if we're putting our stake in the ground as leading innovators in the refined carb space, what better way to start than by transforming the most carb heavy food, a bagel, into the carb equivalent of 2 slices of banana. It's like once we built that foundation, then everything else becomes a little bit easier. And then also just in terms of relative market size and use case, the bagel market in itself is $1 billion market that, is a great trial for us in terms of like use case and distribution. It works D2C, it works food service, it works retail and wholesale. So a lot of places where we can really test.
That is so interesting and amazing and exciting. I just love it. What happens like after you kind of do your market research? How do you go about like proving out the concept and what's the feedback when you're telling people what you're trying to do? And how do you even know it's possible? Like I have so many questions.
Well, I think, I mean, I spoke to a lot of people working on research in the space, mostly academic, to be fair at that point, because there weren't a lot of practical applications of it, which I thought was really really interesting. So I had an idea of how we were going to start, right? I mean, I guess with anything associated with food tech or R&D, like you don't really, you can never 100% know that it's going to be possible when you first start, right? You just have to have that groundwork, that knowledge, and that passion, and just drive to say like, okay, we're going to do this, and then think about, if we can do it, that overarching impact and implication that we can have, right? So, and in terms of that impact and implication, and I think this is a really powerful driving factor too, to put it into perspective, at this point, chronic diseases associated with obesity and type 2 diabetes are responsible for 2 out of 3 deaths in America.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. Excess weight, it affects 37 million children. If you want to put that into perspective, 29 million Americans are diabetic, over 60 million are pre-diabetic, and in the US, but it's, if you're thinking worldwide, also obesity is implicated in it's 2/3 of leading causes of death in non-communicable disease. So, and consumption of refined carbs is the single largest driver of obesity in the world, right? So, if you're thinking about, yes, this is what we're setting out to do, but the like huge macro level implications it could have on human health, it's kind of like, okay, like we might not be able to get there, and we don't know, but we have to try, right? Um, so that's kind of how we started. And after I had that fundamental knowledge and understanding of the market and, some idea of how we would start, we fundraised. So we raised our first million, and that was, just for the purposes of R&D, right? We didn't know what was going to happen, but we were going to figure it out and start this journey and movement.
And did I read that you're the first woman to raise $1 million pre-seed in the food industry? Is that correct?
Yeah, but so I think it's sole founder to do that.
Wow, that's cool.
Thank you. And I think, I think it's because of this large mission, right? And the large scope of the undertaking. But it's really exciting.
So talk to me about the R&D process. Obviously, you raised $1 million, you're able to start working with food scientists and labs and coming up with what this could potentially look like. How long did it take? What were the challenges and what were the best bits? What was the best part about it?
Yes. So I will say that this is partially why, your investors are so important, right? So for our first round, for our pre-seed round, it was led by Verso Capital. And they're large players in the food tech space. They have Impossible Foods in their portfolio. They have Just Egg in their portfolio. And they're typically a lot later stage. So they write $100 million checks, $200 million checks. And this is the first time they had come in so early. That in and of itself, it opened a lot of doors in terms of, just the knowledge that they had of who to talk to, like getting labs to pay attention from day one, and getting the right people to be willing to even get on the phone with me. And so Verso was a huge help with that. And just, oh my gosh, in terms of that pre-seed round, it was like, Sean Thomas, who's the grandson of Dave Thomas, who's the founder of Wendy's, was involved, and Patrick Schwarzenegger, and, Nicole Kogan, Emmy Rossum, and just this incredible group of people who had just a lot of passion in the space and I think we're really kind of driving it to help, which was certainly incredible. And then in terms of timeline, so this is the crazy thing that's just, I feel like we're just like 1 in a million type in chance of happening, is we got it right basically immediately. We work with 4 labs in the process on different components of R&D in the process. One lab has, understands the entire scope, and we actually have, very well protected IP on that from them. But we got it right from like almost immediately, and that just does not happen, if you think about Impossible, for example, going back to that story, and Pat Brown, who's just an incredible visionary and genius and scientist, right? He speaks about that the R&D journey with Impossible and how it took them 9 years of time, or sorry, not 9 years of time, $9 million in a year of time to just prove their original hypothesis on how heme should be extracted. So basically to figure out that they couldn't actually do it the way that they wanted and had to start, like exploring a different path and alternative.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. So to say that, we got it right and immediately is it really is one of those like 1 in a million lucky things that happened.
Did it cost you the full million to do it?
It did it.
Oh, very cool.
Right. So, I think that if you believe in the product, right, and the mission, the story of the company, and for the purposes of even driving impact, you should get the product out into the market as fast as you can. Get it out in front of the consumer. Start driving impact, right, and start telling your story and take the consumer on the journey with you. And I also think that's the only way to really build a truly efficient business, because you need that data in order to inform decisions moving forward.
You need that feedback loop.
Exactly. From closing around in February of 2021, we launched in June of 2021. So it was a 4-month.
Oh my God. What? I've never heard anything like it.
I think we just blacked out, quite frankly, for those 4 months. I literally did do anything but work on Better, and it was an amazing thing to do, and I'm sure I drove a number of vendors absolutely crazy, with all these asks and that timeline, but we got it done, and we launched, and have just been refining and working the process, but yeah, we got it on the market pretty quickly.
Wow, that is so crazy. What was the feedback when you launched it, and how did you launch it? What was your launch plan to get the word out there?
So we did D2C to start. We did have some press and excitement around the product from the very beginning, but everything to start was organic, right? Because again, it's like we were testing the messaging. We weren't sure of the scope, like the infrastructure is something that we were still building on, right? And the product was at a point where it was good enough to get in front of the consumer, right? And illustrate what we could do, but obviously, there's still going to be a constant, R&D, or push towards R&D and in constant iterations and improvement. So so when we launched, it was basically like organic. We weren't marketing, and we did 20K the first week, which we obviously were not expecting.
But how? Like, I don't understand. Was there like organic PR, or was it just like you telling your friends and your friends telling their friends?
It's definitely PR. It was. Even that Forbes article that you had mentioned earlier, that was like, okay, first woman to do this, and and wants to innovate on the refined carbs industry, and it's the beyond meat of carbs, and we're transforming a bagel into the two like banana slices. Like, people were really interested from the get-go.
20K is a lot of bagels.
It really, really was, and let me tell you, we struggled to fulfill that so much on the operational back end, and we learned so much from that process. So we actually went out of stock just to catch up with fulfillment, and thank goodness, our customer base was just so understanding and supportive. And you oftentimes, I don't think, get that with brands and customers, but I think it's driven by people who are so mission aligned, and understand the scope of what we're trying to do and accomplish, and the mission we're trying to push forward, and in terms of just breaking free of these unnecessary limitations, right, and boundaries, and creating this world that really fundamentally based on this aspect of freedom, right? And so people were incredibly supportive and patient, and I'm so gracious for it and appreciative. And then went back in stock in July. Same thing happened. It was like 30 some K over 12 days. And then we're like, okay, like really need to focus on building some more infrastructure, the team. And we've been back in stock in August, and we have not been like, we've been able to fulfill everything and growing really quickly, which is exciting. And then in our third active month, we actually broke $1 million run rate. So, and continuing to grow and test and iterate.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. So, like, for you now, is your focus on just growing the bagel or like the bagel side of the business, or is it to introduce new products and kind of like keep steaming ahead, or both?
Both. I think, the overarching, when you say like keep steaming ahead, like that really resonates because for us, it's like this constant push to move faster, right? And expand faster and do more. So we are, continuing to iterate on the bagel or on the better bagel, in terms of texture, taste, flavor, profile, everything. Again, with the consumer feedback loop in mind and using that as a basis. And we have already started R&D on a number of other products.
Ooh, anything you can share?
Yes. Well, so, it's really funny. People always ask like, well, how do you inform this? Is it market driven? And I'm like, it's really the foods that I want to be able to eat freely and not have to worry about. And pizza is one of those foods. So a pizza crust, is next.
It's on the way. I love the language you're speaking right now. This is speaking to me. Does that mean pasta's coming after that?
We're testing.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm so excited. For you guys, like now, obviously you've done the second raise. I'm sure that's for, infrastructure and team and all that kind of thing. But what's your approach to marketing to kind of like double down on the organic word of mouth that's obviously working in your favor?
Yeah. So I think in terms of that organic marketing word of mouth, I really believe in the power of brand and investing in your branding to be able to tell your story, right? Because I think what a brand does is you can look at it and it tells you so much about who the company is, what they represent, and it draws your early evangelists to you. So one of the first things that we did was we brought on a branding agency that, was absolutely incredible, who's worked on the likes of, Spotify, Tesla, Heineken.
Your website is very cool. Very, very cool.
But it's, these world-renowned brands that speak to innovation, but are still really exciting and warm and tangible to the consumer. So we brought them on very, very early. And I think that's something that a lot of people negate is the power of your brand in helping you tell your story. And I do think that that's what drove a lot of that organic attention, initially as well.
Mhm, mhm. That's really, really interesting, and I can see why, like, your your brand is very fun and very, futuristic.
Yes, I mean, it's the future of food, and it's, I think it's exciting in the way that it's going to be a future where without compromise and without boundaries and limitations where we can truly just eat freely and not have to worry.
Oh, I hear you. Amazing. What is your key piece of advice for entrepreneurs in 2022?
Build an amazing team and keep pushing. Don't let anyone tell you your vision can't be done or shouldn't be done. And just really stay focused, and believe in the vision and the impact that you can have.
Love it.
No, I was like, that was a lot of stuff. It's like team, you should do this, do that.
No, I love it. I love it. At the end of every episode, we ask a series of 6 quick questions, some of which we kind of might have covered, some of which we might not have, but I just ask them all the same. So, question number 1 is, what's your why? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Impact. I think what we're doing has the ability to really change the entire consumer experience with food. I think we can inspire and encourage a world without unnecessary limitations or barriers, and truly inspire and encourage people to step out and be themselves, right? And believe that the impossible is possible. And also just again, driving back to the impact of improving human health on a macro level. And it was so interesting. So I was speaking to a girl on my team, and we were talking about like everything we were working on, and she said something that I'd never thought before. She's like, "Wait, so this is kind of the difference between like life and death." And I was and we just had this moment where we were like, we're working on something really powerful here.
That is crazy. That's some serious purpose right there. I love it. So cool. Question number 2 is, what do you think has been the number one marketing moment so far?
I think, well, I really love our branding. um, I think having just this incredible group of investors and supporters behind us in driving forward marketing has been great. So, like Patrick Schwarzenegger, and more recently, who led our recent round, Alexis Ohanian, just on these large platforms, like speaking about the product and sharing it, and having him like seeing that on their social platforms and as part of 776, I think has been really, really special.
The bagel review moment. Alexis reviewing the bagel. It's so funny. It's so good. I was like, "I need to see more of this content. I want you to review things more often. It's really good."
Oh my god, we should pitch that to him. Like
Oh
a
my god, you should. Like a spin-off channel. Just reviewing things. I love it. Question number 3 is, what's your go-to business resource when it comes to like a book, a podcast, or a newsletter?
I love This Week in Startups.
Okay, I don't know that one. I'm gonna have to sign up.
Very, very good. I actually recently read um, a book on Elon Musk and his journey, and I would encourage everyone to read it. It's so absolutely inspiring, and just in terms of his work ethic and what I think it really takes to build something brand and special, and the compromises he made along the way. Um, it's really inspiring.
Do you remember the name?
Elon Musk, and it's written by, not her name, her first name is Allison, but it's kind of like the race to space, something like that.
Great. I'm gonna look it up and we'll put it in the show notes. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your AM or PM rituals and habits that keep you feeling happy and successful?
So I will say, my day is pretty heavy. I don't think there's been a week since launch where I haven't worked 80 to 100 hours. But I love Peloton. It's easy, it's there. It's become, part of my routine, certainly. And I think just being with the team is is really energizing, because it's like all these incredible people who are working towards the same goal. And honestly, it's like work doesn't feel like work.
Mhm. 100%. Love that. Question number 5 is, what's the worst money you've spent in the business so far?
I don't know. Think, I mean, we bought some merch. I think we ordered more than we needed.
And there you go.
Significant. Yeah.
Great. And last question, question number 6 is, what's been a major fail that you can share and how did you deal with it?
I think maybe when we launched, being, I mean, for lack of better words, unprepared on the fulfillment end, I think was something that we could have definitely done better on and with, and not having to have gone out of stock, a week in, and not having to have delayed fulfillment. But it's something that we've really built up over time, and now are working with a really high functioning, incredible 3PL to help us navigate, have brought on, incredible leads on the team, on the operations side. Um, but that was definitely a learning point is, you know, you, to be ready in that case. And we were not.
And you are now. That's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we can be, things are moving fast always. And I think we're always iterating and figuring it out as we go. But we are more prepared now than we were then.
Love it. Are you going to ship globally or do you already ship globally?
We don't do globally yet, but that is in our plan.
Great. Love that for me. And I feel like you have a promo code. Now's the time. Tell us about the promo code.
Hype Girl, HYPEGIRL. And, Dune may or may not have a new book that's also, but it's 10% off, products. And we just really want everyone to be able to try it and enjoy it and get your feedback.
Thank you so much. I've loved chatting with you, Aimee. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.